Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to completely unpack the dynamic journey of enterprise, taking you all the way from the most basic building blocks of an economy to the incredible reality of modern business empires. We're going to look at the fundamental rules that govern how wealth is created, destroyed, and rebuilt. And we'll do it all by looking at real-world examples that bring these concepts to life.
So, what do a traditional farming village and a 13-year-old tech CEO actually have in common? It sounds like a trick question, right? Well, let's dive right into it, because the answer lies in the fundamental rules of economics that govern both. Whether you're planting wheat in a rural field or coding an app in a metropolitan city, you're playing the exact same economic game. The scale changes, the technology changes, but the underlying mechanics, they're literally identical.
To figure this out, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the core building blocks of economics, then break down assets, liabilities, and wealth. From there, we're diving into the absolute power of creative destruction, taking a look at Paperboat's genius emotional branding, and wrapping up with India's modern startup ecosystem. Let's get to it.
All right, Section 1, the building blocks of economics.
To understand business, you got to understand what makes production possible in the first place. Think about the hypothetical village of Palampur. It perfectly illustrates the 4 economic resources you need to produce, well, absolutely anything. First up, you have land, and we aren't just talking about dirt. It's all natural resources, like the soil and water in Palampur. Second is labor, human effort and skills, like farm laborers working for wages. Third is capital. This is your manufactured goods and money, stuff like tractors, tools, and the working capital to buy seeds. But the fourth factor? That's the magic ingredient, enterprise. This is the human ability to organize those other 3 factors. It's the farmer who takes the land, hires the labor, buys the tractor, and actually yields a crop. Without enterprise, the rest of it just sits there doing nothing.
Now, as we analyze these economies, we absolutely have to separate facts from opinions. It's the classic divide between objective positive statements and subjective normative statements. A positive statement is testable. If you say an increase in the minimum wage will lead to higher labor costs, well, we can crunch the numbers and prove that true or false, right? It's just describing reality. A normative statement, though, relies on personal beliefs, like saying the government should increase the minimum wage. See the difference? That's a judgment call on what ought to be. Understanding this distinction is absolutely crucial when you're evaluating any business strategy or economic policy.
Moving right along to Section 2, assets, liabilities, and wealth.
So, the whole game here is managing the balance between what puts money in your pocket, your assets, and what takes it out, your liabilities. Assets are simply things you own that hold value and can be sold for cash. They can be tangible, like houses or cars, or intangible, like stocks and patents. Liabilities? Exactly the opposite. These are the debts and obligations you owe to others, like mortgages, car loans, or credit card debt. And here is a fantastic real-world trap to watch out for. A single item can actually be both. Say you buy a house. The physical property is your asset because it holds value. But that mortgage you took out to pay for it? Yeah, that's a liability hanging over you until it's paid off entirely.
And getting a handle on those assets and liabilities is the mandatory first step to calculating your net worth. It's the true scorecard of financial health. Whether you're an individual just trying to track your personal savings or a massive multinational corporation filing a quarterly report, this simple calculation, subtracting all your liabilities from your assets, is the ultimate truth teller. It tells you exactly where you stand.
All right, Section 3, the power of creative destruction. It sounds intense, and it kinda is.
This brings us to the Marxist and Schumpeterian concept of creative destruction. The basic idea here is that old ways of doing things must violently and wonderfully fade out to make room for the new. It's a 3-step cycle. Step 1, a groundbreaking idea or technology sparks innovation. Step 2, because of that shiny new thing, the old, less efficient industries start to struggle and become outdated. And then Step 3, the payoff. New markets, vastly better products, and totally modern jobs are created. It's an endless cycle of clearing out the old to make way for the awesome.
A textbook example of this, the epic showdown between the video rental era and the streaming era. You probably remember the ritual of driving to a physical store, crossing your fingers that the VHS or DVD you wanted was in stock. But then, internet speeds ramped up, and companies like Netflix started delivering vast libraries of content directly to our homes. It totally annihilated the rental model. The destruction was thousands of physical stores boarding up their windows, but the creation was this massive global streaming industry that entirely changed how we consume entertainment forever.
Okay, Section 4, Paper Boat's Emotional Branding.
Now let's look at a real company that played these economic variables perfectly, not with high-tech software, but with pure human emotion. Facing titans like Coca-Cola, the founders of Paperboat realized something profound. Their real competition wasn't other drinks, it was the act of forgetting. As co-founder Neeraj Kakkar famously put it, we didn't want to make a beverage, we wanted to make a time machine. When they launched back in 2013, they were stepping into an arena dominated by multinationals with bottomless marketing budgets. Trying to compete on price or distribution? No way. Impossible. So they completely flipped the script. They decided not to sell hydration. They decided to sell the feeling of being 8 years old again.
Here's how the paper boat strategy worked. They prioritized authenticity over aspiration, selling a true, vivid memory instead of a hyper-athletic lifestyle. By doing this, they executed a classic blue ocean positioning move, practically inventing the ethnic traditional beverage category. Suddenly, they had zero direct competitors. And the packaging? Brilliant. Instead of a standard rigid plastic bottle, they used these soft, nostalgic, hand-drawn doypack pouches that felt almost like a storybook. And by reviving forgotten flavors like Ampana and Jalgira through storytelling, they built an emotional moat so deep that competitors just couldn't undercut them with a price drop.
And if you look at their timeline, it proves for sure that emotional anchoring is a rock-solid business strategy. It all started with a vision in 2009, leading to their commercial launch in 2013. By 2015, they had investors absolutely hooked, pulling in major backing from heavyweights like Sequoia Capital. This fueled a massive national expansion from 2016 to 2018 without even needing celebrity endorsements. And it all culminated in 2021, when the Hershey's chapter began with a majority acquisition. They proved, on paper, that authenticity and emotion are incredibly valuable assets on a corporate balance sheet.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, India's modern startup ecosystem.
Remember the traditional bullet carts of Palampur we talked about earlier? Contrast that with the number 13. That was the age of Tilak Mehta when he founded the Mumbai logistics company Papers and Parcels. Yes, literally 13 years old. He looked at the traditional network of Dabbawalas in Mumbai and realized, hey, these could be utilized for intra-city courier services. He's just one of many incredibly young entrepreneurs in India today, proving that age is absolutely no barrier when you have that enterprise factor. But to make leaps like this easier for innovators like Tilak, you need a supportive environment.
And that's where the government steps in as a massive catalyst, supercharging that enterprise factor through the Startup India scheme. The benefits here are designed to clear the path for youth innovation. We're talking an 80% rebate on patent filing costs to protect new ideas on the cheap. There's an income tax exemption for 3 consecutive years, giving startups the breathing room they desperately need to grow their assets. And interestingly, under the bankruptcy code, you get easy winding up within 90 days. That sounds weird as a benefit, right? But it's actually huge. It heavily reduces the risk of failure, playing right into the whole creative destruction concept. If the idea flops, close it fast and try again. Throw in self-certification for labor and environmental laws to cut the red tape, plus priority access to government tenders, and you've got an ecosystem purpose-built to get people taking risks and building something new.
So we've traveled from the soil of a farming village all the way to the heights of global corporate acquisitions. You've seen exactly how land, labor, and capital are organized by enterprise. You understand the true weight of assets and liabilities. You've witnessed the unstoppable power of creative destruction, the genius of emotional storytelling, and the modern tools available right now to supercharge it all. The board is set. So now that you know the economic rules of the game and the catalysts available to you, what industry will you disrupt? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.